What's going on, everyone? My name's Armando, and today we're going to be discussing in how to manual swap your G37. Let's get into the details. There's different ways in how to manual swap your vehicle depending on what budget you're working on and what you're trying to achieve. So the time has come. You're sick of the automatic transmission. You cannot drift with it. You can't downshift into the corners and be in the right gear. You're sick of it. You want it out of the vehicle. It's time to swap it out. Well, of course, the first thing you're going to need is a manual transmission. Now, depending on how you obtain this transmission, you're going to need a couple of things to go with that manual transmission. You're going to need the clutch, very important. You're going to need the transmission mount, and you're going to need the drive shaft. First, let's start with the clutch. Okay, one of the most important things of this build, I would have to say. So there's several options when it comes to the clutch. You could go the OEM route and you would have less headaches. When it comes to an aftermarket clutch, you have to worry about the stack height. Now, the stack height, it's something very critical that you need when you're doing a manual transmission swap and you're putting aftermarket clutches. In the 370Z, in the G37, there is a slave cylinder. That centric slave cylinder works to disengage and engage the transmission. Now, this slave cylinder is limited in how much travel it could travel to disengage your clutch. Engage and disengage. I talk about this in a lot of my videos. I even have a video in how to measure your stack height. Now, this part is very important because when you go and purchase an aftermarket clutch, depending on the combination that you combine, the flywheel, the pressure plate, and the friction disc, there's going to be a certain stack height, somewhere between 82 millimeters and up, okay? Now, I mentioned 82 millimeters because that is what majority of these slave cylinders require in order to be able to engage and disengage the clutch. So let me give you an example. You can have a Z1 flywheel and you could have a OEM clutch put together, or you could have the stock flywheel with an aftermarket clutch, a Z1, a Zspeed. There's so many clutches out there. So you could combine them together, but every combination is going to have a different stack height. And then you're going to have to measure, do that measurement, and determine if your slave cylinder is going to work with the application or not. If you don't want to deal with any of that, and you figured, hey, the manual swap itself is a big headache, and I don't want to have to worry about any of it, just go with OEM. When you go with the OEM, you don't have to worry about it. You know that it's already pre-measured for you, and you just slap the things together, bolt it on, torque it to specs, and you're ready to go. Right now, in the making of this video, I want to reach out to you guys and let you know there is a shortage of slave cylinders for these cars. Right now, you cannot get the Jim Wolf, you cannot get the Z1. Z1, if you have an update on when you're going to get them, let us know. Write down in the comments if you're watching, if somebody knows when is Z1 going to get their slave cylinders. Let us know, because we need these things. You could eliminate this feature so you could have an external slave cylinder installed. Currently, as of right now, Z1 doesn't have this either. So this is something that you should have in mind when you're planning this build, when you're planning to swap everything over. Let me tell you who does have one in stock and show you exactly what I ended up ordering just recently. So just yesterday, actually, I received in the mail one of these, okay? This is from Zspeed. This is their slave cylinder, and it comes with upgraded hoses, and it comes with everything. I wasn't aware of Zspeed, and I wasn't sure of their quality, but it looks to me like everything is heavy duty. I hate to say this, but it almost looks better than the Jim Wolf. And I have the Jim Wolf installed on the 370Z, but this looks like a better quality, better build unit. The Jim Wolf requires the stock nozzle to hook up into this, and let me show you what I'm talking about. The Jim Wolf uses the stock adapter. This part, this piece of metal clicks right onto the slave cylinder right here, right in the side, okay? It does have a bolt right here behind it, so it cannot back off. And I personally haven't had any problems with it. It worked just fine. The 370Z has had that slave cylinder installed now for a couple of months, probably 8 or 9 months, and it has been working just fine. But I'm just giving you guys a different option just in case you're doing this swap and you cannot come across one. This is the route you probably should go. I will give you an update on how that slave cylinder holds up because unfortunately I had a little surprise, and I'll show you a clip of what happened to me. I installed the factory clutch and I installed the factory slave cylinder. At the time of doing this build, there was no one that was selling a slave cylinder. I tried to get a Jim Wolf and no one had one in stock. They still don't have one in stock. Z1 doesn't have their slave cylinder in stock. So I figured since I was running the stock clutch, the stock slave cylinder should hold up for about 30,000 miles or 40,000 miles with no problem. And later on I could swap this out, not a big deal. Well, it didn't even last 3 seconds in the vehicle. I started bleeding it, and there's a plug that's right here, and that's leaking. So you can see it's leaking. It blew out the plug. This is a good used one that was installed in the vehicle. I should have went with this one since it was working already, but I figured install a brand new one and I should be good. Well, you can see this has to plug here, and then this one doesn't. Brand new, blew it out, OEM. What a piece of shit. So I decided to go with the Zspeed slave cylinder. It looks like it's gonna hold up just fine. It feels heavy duty for sure. It comes with upgraded lines. I will give you a review on how this works. I like the Jim Wolf, but I have to say this looks a little bit better than the Jim Wolf. I will let you know. I'll let you know how it works, and I'll give you an update on that. So if you're following that project, this is a sneak peek of what's going on. Keep this in mind, guys. If you're gonna go the aftermarket route and your car is not gonna make any more than 400 horsepower, you really don't need to upgrade the clutch. The stock OEM clutch, the friction disc is not gonna really slip on you. If you put it brand new, it's gonna be just fine. When you're increasing horsepower, maybe you're boosting it, maybe you're building a track car, then that's when you should upgrade your clutch. Now, I'm not telling you what to do or what not to do, but keep in mind, if the car is gonna be a daily driven vehicle, you really don't want, is up to you, but you really don't want that pressure plate being so stiff and being a pain in the ass. Now moving on to the drive shaft. This part is where it connects to the back of your transmission, and it's gonna transfer that power to the back of the differential. So the drive shafts are different. All right guys, so here we have both of the drive shafts. This one's for a manual, and this is for an automatic. You can see there is a big difference, okay? Look at the one for the manual and look at the one for the automatic. The manual one is a little bit longer than the automatic one. And of course, here in the rear, the automatic one looks like this and the manual one looks like that. This has a 3 bolts that go onto the back of the flange, and this one has 4 bolts. So you have to replace it with a manual one. What I did with the G37, since it's a G37 coupe, I looked for a G37 coupe manual drive shaft. I ordered one on eBay, it came in, everything just plugged right in. The only thing you're going to have to worry about is the rear flange for the differential. Everything should just slide right in. The mount, because it's a 2-piece drive shaft, the mount, the mid mount, just bolts right on. I had no problems. You're gonna have to worry about the rear flange for the differential. And this goes right in the back of the differential that hooks up to the drive shaft. And you can see this is for the automatic, and this is what the manual one looks like. It's completely different. So you're gonna have to swap that out. In the automatic, it's gonna have a shaft right here that comes out and it goes right into the drive shaft. You're going to have to trim that off. You have no choice. You're gonna have to cut it and grind it down. And that shaft that I'm talking about goes right into here on the automatic. So what I did to solve this problem is I went to Z1, I ordered a brand new flange. You don't have to do that. You don't have to go that route, but I didn't want to hunt one around. I didn't want to look in eBay. I could have went a cheaper route, but I went to Z1, I ordered one. Apparently, it's the same piece for a 350Z, a 370Z, a G35, and a G37. They're all the same. So there is a certain procedure that you should take. If you over tighten it, that rear differential is gonna lock up on you and it's not gonna rotate, okay? So look up the torque specs, and it's all up to you to do it correctly because you could run into complications later on down the line. Now, since I was there in the back in the rear differential, I went ahead and I replaced the seal around the pinion. It's a great idea to do this as well. You know, you're back there, you're removing the flange, put the new one on. It's one of those things that, hey, why not? You're there. Okay, it was only a couple of bucks from Z1. I ordered it from Z1 as well, and I just put it into place, and I know that part is secured. So that's something you should keep in mind. And talking about seals, I know I'm going to jump back to the clutch. So another thing, since you will be installing a clutch, you will be installing a flywheel, you have everything out, you might as well do the rear main seal, and of course the pilot bushing. Make sure you do the pilot bushing. So you have all of that installed. You have the drive shaft, you have the clutch, everything is nice and snug, everything's installed. So the next thing you're gonna have to worry about is the clutch lines, the master cylinder all the way down to the slave cylinder, those lines. So what I did, I went on eBay and I ordered lines for a G37 coupe. Those lines I picked up, they're already preformed. Now, during the process of installing these lines, you will have to remove the brake booster. If you could find a different way in how to do it, let me know. So in order to do these lines, you're gonna have to remove the brake booster to run the line underneath it. And it goes out the right side of the firewall. In order to do this, you're gonna need a hole saw. You're gonna need to modify a couple of things. All right, moving on to the master cylinder for the clutch pedal. So the clutch pedal, it's basically gonna go exactly where the e-brake pedal is. You're gonna have to remove that and you're gonna have to drill through the firewall. In order to bolt it on to the firewall, you're gonna drill the center hole for the master cylinder, and then there's two bolts that bolt down the master cylinder itself, okay? And the pedal and master cylinder sandwiched together. All right, so you're gonna discover that there is not much room for the master cylinder. What I did was I went as far to the left of the firewall as possible in order to give the clutch pedal and the brake pedal some space, and I drilled almost right next to the wiring harness. That was the best placement for my pedal in my situation. If you're doing a different vehicle, maybe a G35 or a 370Z, you might have a little bit more space. But for the G37, it was a tight fit, and that's exactly what I did. And this is what it looks like inside here. I know there is not much space. It is a tight fit. Here's the master cylinder for the clutch, okay? This is the reservoir, the master cylinder is back there. And of course, since we're talking about the clutch pedal, you will need a clutch pedal. I ordered this in eBay as well. The brake pedal, it's something you might need or you might not. And let me explain why. The brake pedal itself, if you feel comfortable trimming down the brake pedal and making it the correct size, you can make a template off of the manual pedal and trace it onto the automatic brake pedal and trim it. There's a guy out there that did exactly this, and it seems to have worked just fine for him. Now, I of course swapped it out. I didn't have to worry about trimming it. So that's something you should keep in mind. If you want to save some money, you could just trim that brake pedal. So here we have the brake pedal, and you can see this is a lot wider than the one I have installed right now. This is a lot slimmer, so it could have space for the clutch pedal. I seen someone online, they actually cut back on here and they made this slimmer. You could probably do that, no problem. He did it and it worked just fine. All right, so moving on to the wiring of the clutch pedal. This is something that several people have asked me about, and I'm gonna go into a little bit more detail in this subject. When you press down on the clutch pedal, there is a switch. That switch works with power. It uses power from a specific fuse, and I'm going to have the diagram so you could run it exactly how it shows on the wiring diagram, or you could provide power to it your own way. So of course you're going to need to install the pedal, and you're going to need to wire the switch. There's the switch right there, okay, and it's going to need power. And on the schematic, on the wiring diagram for the G37 and the 370Z, it shows that there's power hot. It's power on all the time. It's always hot. So what I did was I installed this. This type of connector lets you run 2 circuits right off of the fuse without having to splice into the back. So I purchased this connector. I'll have a link in the description in case you're wanting to do it this way. So I ran 2 fuses, one for the existing circuit, the 10 amp, and I ran another 10 amp fuse. It probably doesn't need to be 10 amps. It could probably be lower, but I ran it with a 10 amp because that's what it showed in the schematic. If you don't do it this way, you're gonna have to disconnect this. You're gonna have to find the correct wire for the circuit 9, and I believe it's number 9. It works, it's the same circuit as the key slot circuit. That's what it shows in the schematic. So basically, I found that fuse. It was a 10 amp fuse, and I just ran this in here. And like I said, it lets you run 2 circuits out of 1, okay? And you basically just install it, I ran the wire to the back of the switch, and from the switch, it goes all the way to the BCM over there. And of course, this is where the BCM lives, and this is the wire that I ran for the clutch pedal right here, and it plugs into this pin. Now remember, guys, when you're doing any type of installation, always install a fuse the closest to the power source, just in case there's a short, so you don't burn down your vehicle. I would hate for one of you guys to message me and tell me, hey, my car caught on fire because of the manual swap. Always install a fuse the closest to the power source. I wired the whole vehicle. I wired it how it showed in the schematic. The reason why I did that is because that's how the factory wired it, and I figured that this was gonna work perfectly for me. Now here in front of me, I have the wiring harness for an automatic. And right here, right in this pigtail, this is the one that plugs into the automatic transmission. This is for the automatic transmission module. This plugs right into it. Now, when you disconnect this guy, you might have some codes. I am not sure, since I switched out my harness altogether. I did the complete swap. My whole harness is for a manual. So the difference is, in a manual one, you don't have this plug, and it has other plug that plugs into the transmission. The extra wire that comes here, one you have one for the O2 sensor, one for each bank, and this is for the starter. So this plug, you're going to have to make it work somehow for your manual transmission. And what I mean about that is the manual transmission have certain plugs that you're gonna have to wire into that harness. Without those plugs, some of the features might not work. Maybe you might not have the speed, something, it's not gonna work. So there's a plug here on this side, and there's a plug on the other side of the transmission. And here you can see the wiring harness for the manual. This is where the starter goes, and this is where the 2 O2 sensors go, right here. And these are the 2 plugs that plug into the transmission. You have one for one side and one for the other. You're going to have to wire that in to that plug. I didn't have to do that since I used a manual wiring harness. And here is the other sensor that I was talking about for that wiring harness. So you have 2 sensors that you're gonna have to wire into. So it all depends on what route you go. If you go with swapping out the whole harness for a manual harness, you will fight the removing of the harness, and it's going to be a big pain in the ass if the engine's not removed. If you decide to go this route, just remember you're going to have to wire some things in. So it all depends which route you want to take. Will you need the manual BCM to do this swap? And the answer is no. You really don't need this. You could do it without it. You could do this swap without it. There's another guy on the internet that's done it. I replaced mine because I wanted the instrument cluster to show clutch to start the vehicle. That was important for me. I didn't want it to look like the car was automatic at all. I wanted it to feel like a manual vehicle that came from the factory that way. If you do this, if you swap the BCM out, you will need to program the key. That would lead you into a little bit more complication. On this green connector, there is a certain pin, and I'm gonna show you with great detail in a clip in which pin I'm talking about. All right, so in front of me, I have the starting circuit. Now, I don't have a capture card, and this is the best I could do for you guys. So I will have this picture posted somewhere, maybe on Facebook or Instagram, in case you need it. So right here, you can see this is the body control module. And if I zoom in really good so you can see it, you can see here is the circuit for the manual transmission and the automatic. Now, pay attention to this. There's a pin. These are the pin numbers, okay? You have a pin number 140 and a 114. In order to start the vehicle, if you trace this wire all the way back right here, okay? It comes all the way here, it connects right there, and right here on the automatic, it connects to the transmission control module. That module, it's a big fat pigtail that sits into the transmission underneath your vehicle. When you put the car in park or you put it in neutral, the car is able to start. And how it does that is it provides power to this circuit. And if you follow this wire all the way up into here, you can see there's a starter relay. That starter relay gets energized by this gray wire, and it completes the circuit and it starts the vehicle up. Or it would let you start the vehicle up. Now, in order to convert it into a manual, if you look, we're going to zoom back in. Right here, where it splices in, you have an automatic and you have a manual. Now, it's the same exact wire. It's the gray wire, okay? So, what you're going to do is wire in the clutch interlock switch. So, it's right under the left side of the dash. And you can see, it's just a switch. You can see that once the circuit is completed, it provides power and it goes into that relay. Now, how do I know it's power? If you look all the way up here and you follow it all the way back, you see the circuit 9. You can see that it's a 10 amp fuse. This is the same fuse as the key slot fuse. So let's go over it one more time. You want to start the vehicle. In order to start the vehicle, it either needs to be in park or in neutral. But when you convert it over, what you do is press the clutch. The clutch switch adds power to the circuit. That circuit is energized. Once it's energized, it completes the circuit, and this relay is energized. The switch turns on. The switch sends a signal to the starter control relay. The starter control relay then sends a signal to the starter motor. So in order to start your vehicle with the clutch switch, you're going to have to do this. Alright, so here is the layout for the plug. This is the pin that goes into the body control module. And let me zoom in on here. Let's zoom in. So you can see right here the clutch interlock switch, its circuit, it's pin 114. For the automatic, okay, you have 140 and you have the shift neutral park, okay? Since you're converting your car over from an automatic to a manual, you're going to be missing this pin right here, the 114, okay? And if you look right here, right on in the back of this connector, you can see you could count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3,
And this is for the manual. This came with the body control module that I purchased off of eBay. Okay, here is the wire for the manual. Your car will not have this. This wire would not be here. Okay, and for the automatic, the pin is right here. So we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then I'm going to go ahead and fold this over, and I'm going to count 9 over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And you can see for the automatic, since this is for their manual, it's missing. We don't have that wire in there. Now, this piece of information is the most important. If you're converting your vehicle and you have changed everything over, you have changed the body control module, you changed the PCM, you replaced the whole harness, you will need to repin it. You're going to have to insert a wire into here. You're going to have to repin it just like how it shows right here, and you're going to have to put a wire here. If you are not doing that and you're using the existing wiring harness from the automatic, what you're going to do is you're going to splice into that green wire or that gray wire that sits right there, the 140. So that is the most important part of this whole hookup. So remember, if you're replacing everything like I did, and if you look at my videos, you can have a good idea of what I did, you're going to have to insert this wire here. If you're not, all you're going to have to do is tap into that wire, into the automatic wire. And again, is the automatic, it's pin number 140, and the manual is 114. And let's zoom in one more time. You can see 114 red, 140, you have the shift neutral park. If you're trying to remove one of the pins from here, this has a locking mechanism. You're going to have to pull back on this, and right now this is soft because I mess with it so many times. You're going to have to pull back on here to release the lock. If this is pushed forward, pushed in, okay, you will not be able to remove the wire. So in order to do this part, you're going to need a very small flathead screwdriver. There's a special tool to do this, but one of these small screwdrivers work just fine. And what you're going to do is right inside here, there's these little clips that hold the pin down. You're going to insert the screwdriver and pull up, and you're able to remove the wire. Once you remove the pin, you could insert it in the correct location, or if you just want to leave it into place and add a different one in, you could do that, and that's what I did. When I ordered my manual BCM, it came with extra connectors, like the one I'm holding right here, and what I did was I removed one of the wires from here, and I just inserted it into the pin slot that I needed. So since we're in the topic of talking about the BCM, I'm going to talk about the PCM. So this controls the engine, this controls everything, all the electronics inside the cab. I changed mine out to a manual. You don't have to do this since I had the engine out of the vehicle. It made more sense to swap over to the manual harness. You don't have to go this route. You don't have to remove the engine to do a manual swap. That would be very silly. Well, we purchased a vehicle with a rod knock, and here's the bearing. Here's what's left of it. I'll leave a link below in the description so you could check out that video if you're interested. So my vehicle actually has a manual wiring harness, it has a manual BCM, it has a manual PCM. Everything has been converted over. Now, there's something I didn't know. If you decide to swap this car over and try to make it as factory as possible into making it look and feel like the factory vehicle, I thought I needed to order a manual instrument cluster, because in the manual instrument cluster, it shows you to compress the clutch pedal in order to start the car instead of showing press the brake to start. Okay. Now, I discovered that once I swapped the BCM, it was able to send a signal
to that instrument cluster, it's almost like if it was a monitor and it changed the image from a brake pedal to a clutch pedal. I didn't know that that was going to happen. So save yourself some money. You don't need the instrument cluster. I didn't know this. I'm going to be selling it later on eBay. I'm replacing the center console. You will need the manual one. So here we have the center console, the automatic one and the manual one. You can see there is a difference, okay? Can you make this one work? You could probably make the automatic work, okay? But I went with the manual one. You can see this is exactly where the e-brake handle goes. You could probably make it work somehow. I'm not sure. I wasn't gonna try it. I just went ahead and just purchased the manual one. When you purchase the manual handle for the e-brake, you're gonna need the cable to go along with it, because the one for the automatic, the cable's a lot longer. It's a couple of feet longer, and you're gonna need to swap that out. You're gonna need to swap it out with the manual one. I ordered my cable from Z1. You could pick one up used from eBay, of course. Now, when it comes to hooking up the cable and installing the e-brake, you will have to modify a couple of things. There isn't a correct spot to put it. There is no markings. You're gonna have to kind of figure it out on your own. You're gonna have to install the instrument cluster, or you're gonna have to install the center console. You're gonna have to put the e-brake handle where it goes and kind of mark things. Here's the e-brake handle. I made this piece custom. It had too much slack when I installed the e-brake, so I installed that. You can see I ran the wire for the e-brake switch. So basically where the e-brake pedal used to be, there's a wire. I just extended it and I connected it to this. Something else to keep in mind that you're gonna have to do is you're going to have to relocate the yaw sensor. And the yaw sensor is very critical when it comes to the braking system. You do not want to disable this because your ABS system will not work. Basically what it does is it's able to measure the acceleration, the tilt of the vehicle and whatnot, and connect everything together to let the vehicle know how to apply the brakes, whether or not it's getting out of control. So basically I took a piece of acrylic, I took two pieces of acrylic and I extended it out. It was going to interfere with my emergency brake handle. And you can see this part comes down and it was interfering with it. So I just put it a little bit forward with this. You can make this out of wood, out of metal, out of anything. I used my laser engraver and I just cut two pieces of acrylic and it worked perfect. If you guys own a laser engraver and you want to cut it out yourself, message me and somehow I will get the file out to you. If you need this piece, message me and I will make it for you. So when it comes to the shifter linkage and installing it, you will need to cut into the floorboard. You're gonna have to cut back a little bit on it. I achieved this with a hole saw and a saw and did a clean cut. You could do this many different ways. However you cut it, it's up to you. I lowered the transmission, I installed this, then I raised it up with a jack and I saw how much of the material I needed to cut. I marked it, lowered it, and I cut away. So here is where the shift linkage comes through. I was able to I cut this back right here. When it comes to bolting on the transmission, I reused the same bolts from the automatic. They work just fine. And if I was to rate this based on skill level, 10 being you're a professional mechanic to 0 being that you're a complete novice, I would say you would need to be somewhere between a 5 and a 6. You're going to need to have a little bit of experience. You're going to need to know what to do if you encounter a certain situation. You will be removing the flex plate. You will be installing the flywheel. You're going to be torquing things down. You're obviously going to need a torque wrench. You're going to need to torque everything to specs. Always follow everything back up with, if it requires a red Loctite, use the red Loctite. If it requires blue Loctite, use the blue Loctite. That's very important when doing this installation. So if you're a complete beginner and I'm telling you, hey, you should have skill levels to a 5 or a 6, okay? Does it mean you cannot do this job? No, it absolutely doesn't mean that. I have done it when I was first getting started. I have done builds like this back when I was 19, 18 years old in the garage. And as I needed the tools, I went out and purchased them, and I figured it out, and I was able to figure it out and do the build just fine. Just because you haven't done this before doesn't mean you can't do it. You're just gonna have to learn everything along as you go. Something else worth mentioning is a transmission jack or some type of adapter kit or something you make. So when you're removing that transmission, you're gonna need to safely remove it off of the engine without it falling on you.
This is the platform that I built to remove the transmission. I used this on the 370Z, and now I'm using it on the G37. So what you are gonna be able to reuse is the brace that holds up the transmission, that mount. You're gonna be able to reuse it. This is for the automatic, and it bolts it right onto the manual one. If you purchase a manual transmission and it does not have the transmission mount, you're going to have to buy one.
Either way, you're gonna need to remove that transmission somehow very safely so you don't get hurt. If you're doing this by yourself, okay, be careful, take your time.
So just in case you were wondering how long would it take you to pull the transmission out, I was able to do it, me, myself, in 45 minutes. And that's without a lift. Now, keep in mind, I didn't have an exhaust installed. I just had to remove the drive shaft and remove all the bolts and drop the transmission. But it only took 45 minutes. It doesn't take that long to pull one of these transmissions out. It's just a big inconvenience because you're working on your back. But if you have the correct tools and you know what you're doing, 45 minutes, 30 minutes, and you can have this transmission out.
So that pretty much sums it up. If I miss anything, guys, message me, send me a comment, say, hey, can you talk a little bit about this? I'll be more than happy to message you back, or go ahead and make an update video on that subject if you guys need me to. I have no problem doing that. I'm trying to make this as easy as possible for everyone out there, because there is no real guide in how to do things like this. If you're doing any other vehicle, you're working on any other vehicle other than the G37, the process is pretty much similar, okay? You will need all these parts. Everything, any manual swap, it's gonna require a transmission, a flywheel, the clutch, the drive shaft, the pedals, the master cylinder for the clutch pedal, the lines. You're gonna require all this. So it pretty much all relates. If you do one manual swap, it's pretty much the same for a different manual swap. The parts change a little bit different. You might need a longer drive shaft, you might need a shorter drive shaft, but you're always gonna need around the same amount of parts for any manual swap. If you find this video helpful, please subscribe, please give me a thumbs up, or just go ahead and share it. Right now, we're currently at 600 subs. We're doing pretty decent, I believe, for a new channel. And how new are we? We don't even have a year into this YouTube business. So I'm just uploading videos one at a time. As I finish them, I have a lot of content. Will this be the final build in my channel? Hell no. There's plenty to come. I still have to work in installing a bunch of the parts on the 370Z. We have a G35, and we even have a Mazda Miata, which we haven't done any videos on yet. So there's still more to come. I have to finish the G37. I have to paint it. I'm gonna be painting it myself. I have painted several cars in the past. I'm not a professional painter, but I know how to get it done. And when all those projects are done, I do have something in stored, a surprise I'm working on. It's gonna be pretty cool. I don't know when I'm gonna be bringing it to the house so I could work on it. I kinda wanna finish everything first and then bring it here. It's gonna be a very unique build, and trust me, it's gonna be different. So you guys follow me on Facebook, follow me on Instagram. I even have a TikTok. I'm posting a little bit of different content on TikTok right now. And until the next one, we'll see ya.